Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Mike, we are about a year in on a couple different universes. A couple videos we're going to do, probably about one a month, just until the end of the year. We wanted to examine a few universes that have started recently in comic books. We wanted to look at the Ultimate Universe that started in Marvel. We're going to talk about Ghost Machine and the universe that Jeff Johns and them have been building up in our next video on this.
Yes,
And then by that time, by the end of the year, we'll probably have a better bearing on that absolute universe. And we'll be a couple issues in on Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman at that point. So hopefully we'll have a fair shake of seeing where we are with that.
absolutely.
But DC with the all in and the absolutely is giving you way too many chances to do the pun jokes uh,
Absolutely.
for things. What we thought we'd start with, though, we talk about the one that's the most advanced, and that is the Ultimate Universe in terms of that's about 10 months in for most of their books. It's a little bit older than that because there was that Ultimate Universe four-parter and all that, but most of the books have hit about issue 10. A couple of the others, I think the Ultimates is at issue 5. So we've gotten a pretty good bearing on most of these books. There are a
Oh,
couple
yeah.
arcs in for the most part. Four books overall. We do know, and we'll talk about this at the end. There is a fifth book that's been announced, which is Ultimate Wolverine, which we'll talk about our
Oh,
hopes and anticipation for that. But we'll
okay.
talk about what's working and what's not. Where are we at? Do we think this has been a success or a failure? So for you, Mike, I know you started with me. We picked up, I think you and I picked up the first issue of all of these, or I know I
Yes.
did. I think you did. How many are you still reading of the Ultimate Universe books? And of the ones you're still reading, how would you look at them? You're still
Two.
on two. Okay.
Two. I didn't get the Ultimates and I didn't get the
You're out on
I
Ultimate
dropped
X-Men and the Ultimates.
yeah, I dropped the Ultimate X-Men. It wasn't an X-Men book that it wasn't an X-Men book.
Yeah.
So
No, it flat out isn't. It's just not an X-Men
um,
book.
so I was hoping to get a jumping on point for an X-Men story. I'm still looking for that sweet spot with the original lineup that never seems to quite materialize.
Yeah.
Um, but I am loving Spider-Man and I am loving Black Panther. And
Yeah.
those two have stuck with me mainly because I recognize the characters, even though in Spider-Man it's an upside down, universe
Mhm.
uh, where things have radically changed, but it's still kind of cool to see Uncle Ben and Jay Jonah
Yeah.
starting a newspaper business together. That's really cool, and it just as a story, it worked out better for me. And the same with Black Panther. As a story, it just hooked me and got me to keep reading and keep it on my sub list.
Yeah.
What did you think about the two that you
I'm
dropped? What did
still,
you think about them?
I was on all four through the first, I typically give books at least 5 or 6 issues. So all four I bought up through issue 5. I dropped X-Men, and I'm not going to pick up the Ultimates anymore. Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Black Panther. I agree with you on both of those. Ultimate Spider-Man to me, it's again, it's one of those things. It's just you're looking through it. It's kind of was at the Star Wars, the Mirror Universe, where Spock's got like the evil Spock with the beard and all that. It's
Yeah.
not like that, but it's just a glance of that Spider-Man universe through a different lens, right? And I think that's what makes it interesting is you do see this world where Uncle Ben is alive, and what would that relationship with J. Jonah Jameson be, and how does Peter's life change? And there's been some issues where Peter's not even in it as much, but what I think is helping is there's such an interesting world to build out. And I think that's one of the strengths of Jonathan Hickman as a writer is he's very good at just writing an entire universe of characters and kind of putting them on the board in different places where you're intrigued to see those interactions where would I like to see a little bit more Spider-Man action down the line? Sure. But what I do have to give him a lot of credit for is one of the things we critique modern writers for is you kind of come up with these stories out of left field and then you just expect us to go with it without doing the work to build it. And one of the things I got to give Hickman credit for is if he is planning on staying this book for a while, he's really built up Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson and that paper that they're building and the importance of that, building up the world where the Kingpin is kind of in charge of all of New York. And, Spider-Man's a rookie and he's just, one of the things we accuse writers of a lot is they call them what Mary Sue's for girls and Gary Stu's for guys, where all of a sudden the guy's just incredible at everything and they win. What I love is like, no, Peter hasn't really had a huge win yet, but I kind of like that because he's only 10 months in. This is a guy in
Yeah,
his mid 30s who just started trying to be a superhero. Like it
right.
shouldn't be instant. And so I do like that we've seen a little bit of balance with his family and a little bit of, trying to figure out how to be it. And if he stays on the book long term, I think that's a really satisfying story that he's building. And I like that we get a feel of who Harry Osborn is and Gwen is and all these different characters. And so I give it a lot of credit. I know for some folks it's going to be a little slower paced for them and they may not like necessarily what's going on. But I have to give him credit and that I can't critique writers and say you don't do enough world building. Then you spend time world building and I'm like, well, you're not doing enough. And so I think there's enough in the book threads wise that keeps you invested. I would say Ultimate Spider-Man still remains one of the best comic books that I pick up. I look forward to every issue. Ultimate Black
Me
Panther, I
too.
think very similarly, and we can talk about that one now. I think Ultimate Black Panther, I'm still very much in on that book because I love the character of T'Challa. I think he's a great character in comic books, especially when you go back and read some of those formative appearances. I don't know what the heck happened to that character, but he's not in the main Marvel universe anymore. There hasn't been T'Challa in the main universe as he should be in a really long time. And so it's really cool to read the Ultimate Universe where Brian Hill's doing a good job of it's a Black Panther comic book. It's
It
not hugely
is.
different, right?
It
Like
really,
Killmonger and Storm are in there and yeah, their relationship's a little different. But really it's if you were to put this as a main universe continuity outside of, there's the war with Moon Knight and a couple different things going on. But it's a good Black Panther comic book. It's nothing like spectacular. I'm not sitting here going, oh my gosh, it's the greatest comic book you'll ever read. But it's a solid Black Panther story. And in all honesty, we haven't gotten that in a really long time.
I
And so it's just
know.
cool to see a good character like that get a run where maybe not spectacular, but it's just really cool to read a T'Challa comic book again and go, that's pretty cool.
I know, me too. I really like that I can recognize the characters and that they're doing the things that I would expect them to do. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a great read. Like I said, both of these stories kept me intrigued. I've been away from these characters for a very long time. They kind of lost me, and
Yep.
uh, I was looking for a great jumping on point. And we've been talking about this for years. Like there's some of these characters of favorite characters of ours, like Spider-Man, Black Panther, Thor,
Yep.
Iron Man,
Captain America. Yeah.
Captain America. We've just kind of, you've lost us. And I'm looking for a jumping on point where I can get back into some Captain America action and the Spider-Man action. And now here it is, and Black Panther stuff. And here it is. So these books brought it. I'm glad to have them on my sub list. I look forward to them every month, and I'm a happy Marvel fan at this point.
Yeah, I think we've gotten two good ones. I think we can talk a little bit about the ones that aren't working as much. I think Ultimate X-Men is where we can start. I think this was something where I would say it was just a misfire from the beginning. I know you talked about wanting to have a jumping on point. It's not that this wasn't a jumping on point for people. It's just a jumping on point no one was asking for. None of these characters are the characters in the X-Men. And so it's one of these things where it's I think bait and switch kind of thing of let's put the X-Men branding on it. It has nothing to do with the X-Men. The only recognizable character was Armor, really, from the X-Men. They had a couple other characters who you would know in the Marvel universe, but they're really not X-Men related characters. I think the Shadow King showed up, but largely what this is and I guess I can respect Marvel trying it. It's an anime style comic book, is what they're trying. And Peach Momoko, look, she has her fans. I'm not one of them, but I'm not going to say that her work doesn't work. I do know you and I both met guys at the comic book store where every variant cover she does, they pick up. They really invest in her stories. I just think for older comic book fans like ourselves, and for anybody who is looking for Colossus, Cyclops, Wolverine, Juggernaut, and Nightcrawler, etc. You're just not going to find it in that book.
You know,
It's for more anime fans, in my opinion. Go ahead, Mike.
what I'll say about Peach is that she's an amazing artist, right? And her art style is pretty recognizable and distinct. And she has her fans. And this is, she's a powerhouse in the industry. There's no doubt about it, because she is amazing. But the thing about it is that um, it wasn't an X-Men book really.
It's an X-Men thing in name only.
Yeah, and for me, like being a a tertiary Marvel fan, I have my favorite heroes, and I've always liked the X-Men. Looking for a jumping on point, like it was for Spider-Man and Black Panther for me, and I was hoping that it was, and this book just wasn't it. It could have been, and I feel personally, I feel like they could have given her more freedom had they took the X-Men branding off of it, and she could
And
have
just let her tell her own thing.
she might have come up with a great story with her own characters and made a brand new book that would have been amazing.
Yeah, I think the thing with Ultimate X-Men is it kind of, in my opinion, represents everything wrong with modern comic books. And what I mean by that is it's not Peach Momoko's fault and it's not the fans' fault, but you end up creating a book that really is going to alienate a bunch of people. Peach Momoko is writing a story that has nothing to do with X-Men. And like you said, they not put the X-Men branding on it and just called it Ultimate whatever. I don't know, Ultimate Guardians of the Galaxy or Ultimate Invaders or whatever. Right? Give them one of these team names, Ultimate Defenders, right? And just make it these characters she wants to explore. I think fan expectations would have been like, it's fine, right? These are new characters. That's cool. When you throw the X-Men branding on it, you're going to get X-Men fans going, okay, wait, for Ultimate Spider-Man fans, it's Peter Parker. For
Yeah,
Ultimate Black Panther fans, it's T'Challa. So cool. Ultimate X-Men, I'm going to see my favorites. And if you picked it up, it's just not anything to do with that. And look, I won't say Marvel did anything duplicitous or anything like that. And that, in all honesty, they didn't market it as such. They didn't put Wolverine on the cover. They didn't put Cyclops on the cover. But it does say X-Men. And expecting the X-Men brand to be something that you recognize, I don't think you can get mad at fans. I don't think you can get mad at Peach either. She's just doing the job that she said she was going to do. It's just one of those things where, like you said, they wanted to use the X-Men branding to get people like you and me who like X-Men and have been looking for a jumping on point to get invested.
you
And they
sold the
wanted to use
plastic
Peach Momoko
copies.
for her fans. And unfortunately, those two just don't mix.
I think she would have been better served had Marvel given her complete freedom, like she deserves, because she's
Well, she had that kind of Demon Days or something like that, where
the
she just got to
powerhouse
tell her
that
own
she is.
stories.
Yeah, just let her do her own thing. I mean, she's a powerhouse. You don't have to pin her down with X-Men characters that, I don't know.
Yeah,
Who knows
it's
what
just
went on. She might
it's
have
a
gone to him and said, "Hey, I want to do these, you know, far out X-Men
yeah, no,
characters."
and I don't blame. What I'll say about Ultimate X-Men, me dropping the book, I didn't drop the book because the quality was bad. It's just not a story I was going to pick up. A
Exactly.
story about younger teenage Japanese heroes. There's nothing wrong with that book. That book I'm sure can sell to a lot of people. It's just not the X-Men, and it's not a book I was ever going to pick up. And it's not to say that she was a bad writer or the story was awful.
You know,
It just didn't work for what they sold it as.
that book that you just described is something that our teenagers would have picked up.
Yeah, no, that's a manga
And they
kind
would
of
have
book that
loved
could
it.
work.
But then you put the X-Men brand on it and they're like, well, I don't know if I want to get it. But if
Yeah,
you just let Peach go all in on that kind of story, our teenagers would have
she'll have
bought
success, and yeah, I think it represents a lot of what's wrong with comics, and that it's a creative who's put on a book that they don't really have the intention of pleasing the fans of that property, while at the same time it then pits fans against her, and she's not doing bad work. It's just not the work anyone would expect her into that title. Because we see that criticism a lot. Like even I know with Absolute Batman coming out, people were like, "Well, this doesn't feel like Bruce Wayne." For some folks, even though I think it does feel a lot like Bruce Wayne, anyone who has that complaint, what I will say is you still got a book of a guy called Batman who is Bruce Wayne, whereas Ultimate X-Men, good luck finding the X-Men characters in that book. And I think that's where, we kind of lie. I think the last book is the biggest defender of the Ultimate Universe, and it was the one I had so much hope for was the Ultimates because so
now.
much of Marvel.
I know fans of this book that really like
Yeah.
it. It wasn't for me, so go ahead.
So here's where the Ultimates was a huge disappointment to me. The interesting thing about this universe that was created was the Ultimate Universe crossover that started all of this. Jonathan Hickman did a ton of cool world building about the Starks and the Starks' involvement and what happened with the Maker and overturning it. And so there was there was Doom, who was an alternate Reed Richards. There was so many cool character threads that were pulled in. A lot of this because of the history of this universe was manipulated by the maker. And so you kind of had all these interesting characters like Thor and Cap and different characters put on the board in very different circumstances. And the Avengers brand for me has been the one that's most been hit by Marvel in the main universe, in that I haven't enjoyed Thor in a while. Iron Man's had a rough comic for a while. Captain America hasn't been great. So I thought this is going to be great. It's an Ultimate Universe, fresh starting on point with all these characters I've wanted to read for a really long time. And it's just an absolute misfire. And I think the biggest reason it's a misfire, I am sure there are some who enjoy this book. If you enjoy it, good for you. But what I will say where I think this has failed is the Ultimates is 5 issues in now. At least 2 of the issues so far have been very not at all thinly veiled criticisms of the United States and the United States history. Now, here's the thing. I have zero problem with someone critiquing the history of the United States of America. Is it my favorite story to read? No, but you can't look at the history of the United States and say that there aren't things to criticize. And
Right.
there are certainly perspectives that you can tell from that would be interesting story-wise. But I can tell you where that kind of story doesn't belong. And it doesn't belong in a universe that was artificially created by an evil Reed Richards, where the United States of America no longer exists. We talked about this with some of these other books.
We're
It was
gonna
like when
harp
they
on
did
this
that
again because
they did the John Kent Superman, and they
right.
did an issue about how global warming was bad with signs saying there is no planet B. The story takes place in the DC universe where there are
Planet B.
literally probably 1,000 planet Bs to go
Right.
with. And that's the problem with this is, look, if you liked this comic book, that's fine. For me, this is a humongous misfire because if you're going to do a book that is a lot about at least 40% of the issues through 5 have been about critiquing the United States of America and the United States of America's history, you can do that book, but you can't do it in a book where the United States doesn't exist and
What's
world
going
events in
on?
its history were altered by an evil version of Reed Richards. And
Right.
it's again, it's one of these things of putting the horse before the cart before the horse kind of thing
Right.
of just, look, I'm sure this guy's pitch was I can use, the history of America and interweave superheroes into it. And wouldn't that be great? Yes, in a book that takes place where America actually exists, sure. And again, I probably wouldn't pick that book up anyway. It's not really what I go to comic books for. But you
Right.
could make it work if you wanted to, but you can't do it in a place where the United States doesn't exist. It's just, it's an absolute misfire. I think the art in the book is good. And I will say, I thought the first issue was really entertaining. I thought the fourth issue was really good where they explained the Doctor Doom or Doom character in there. Just unfortunately, after this, I think it was the second issue that had a lot of that stuff and that was very heavy handed. I thought, okay, you got that issue out of the way. Maybe we can move forward. We've gone in and we're at it again, and it's just an interesting thing. And that, like, one of the things that was so intriguing about this comic book is this universe had where so many heroes had their destinies denied. The evil Reed Richards came in and changed that, and so I thought, man, this could be such a cool comic book because it could explore what would it be like for Clint Barton to become Hawkeye later, or what would it be like for some of these other characters, or having a new character step into the mantle, or like what they did with Spider-Man, where he's 35 when he gets the powers. You have an unlimited amount of characters that you could have brought into the fold to do that with.
Right.
And I don't blame them for putting some new characters. But we spent an issue with recruiting America Chavez, which of all the characters that you bring in, I don't really know why she would necessarily be on the roster that you want. And then you throw in, we have a new Hawkeye, and I'm like, okay, cool, we're getting a new Hawkeye, maybe that'll be good. And the issue is largely just complaints about the United States. And again, I'm not saying the United States doesn't have things to complain about in our history. I'm not saying that you can't write a book on that. Probably not what I would go to for a comic book, but just really, really disappointing, especially for a book that had so much potential.
Yeah, I have to agree. I was looking I was looking for a jumping on point, and that just really wasn't it for me. Whereas the T'Challa one, the Black Panther one, is
Mhm.
pretty self-contained, because it's in Wakanda, so it's kind of like self-contained.
Yep.
It doesn't have as much impact as everything else does. And the Spider-Man one, of course, it
Contained to
has,
Peter and his immediate family. Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's the thing. I would agree with you. I think some of the things we're seeing that have failed with these larger books. I think Ultimate X-Men and the Ultimates have had more of, they're not about an individual corner. The Ultimates is trying to address the entire universe. Ultimate X-Men seems to be addressing that kind of entire sort of group of mutants. And I think sometimes the weight of that kind of fails on it. It's sad. I think, when I would look at the Ultimate Universe, if you ask me how are they doing, I can't complain that there's 2 good comic books in the universe out of 4. I think a 50% hit rate for modern comic books isn't bad. And I'll take that out of any line. It's just, again, one of the only critique I would have is I think this was a layup. I think this should have been a really easy win. And I think both Ultimate X-Men and the Ultimates, they put creatives in charge who just, I'm not saying they didn't understand the assignment, because I'm sure they went with their pitch and they told them what they were going to do, and Marvel let them do what they're going to do. It's just something where I think Marvel missed the mark on it. I think the Ultimates, you had so much potential of, look, this will be the Avengers, Ultimate Spider-Man, but for the Avengers. And Ultimate X-Men, but it's Ultimate Spider-Man, but for the X-Men. And instead, I think they dropped the ball on it. It'll be interesting what they do. I think we have Ultimate Wolverine coming up. I will say I have a lot of hope for that. I think the writer on that, I can't remember the writer's name, but I think he's also going to start writing Green Arrow for DC. So hopefully we get, good books there. But overall, I can't.
I would say this. I would say better luck next time, guys. When you reboot this stuff, keep that in mind of what worked and what didn't work. And give us X-Men fans, old X-Men fans like me, a good jumping on point, or an old Avengers fan from like me, a good jumping on point to get in and start reading some good new adventures.
Yeah, I think the thing I'll say is they could always bring back these 2 that aren't working, assuming they don't last very long. And who knows? I don't know where the sales are on these exactly. I think the thing is, I would love to see Ultimate Spider-Man continue for a long time. I'd love to see Ultimate Black Panther continue for a long time. Maybe we can do some sort of rebranding. I think that's the thing is maybe after this Ultimates book runs its course, you can always just come back with Ultimate Avengers. I know the Ultimates are technically the Avengers in this universe, but if you needed to rebrand, it's right there. Same thing with Ultimate X-Men. You could always just kind of, if that one runs its course, launch it as Ultimate X-Force or Ultimate Mutants or Ultimate New Mutants or whatever it may be, and just kind of bring those characters. It's sad because I think they bungled some potential, but I'll say I think the 2 that are still going are really strong. I'm excited for Ultimate Wolverine, and like you said, I think there's going to be critiques of this from people, and I get that. What I will say is, as far as a line, if I had to give the line credit as a good line or a bad line of books, I can't be mad at a comic book line that's got 2 good characters and 2 good books going forward. And so while I wish it had been 4 for 4, I'll take 2 for 4 as long as they keep going, because I definitely, Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimate Spider-Man, I'd say right now I got no plans on dropping either one of those for a while, unless they take a weird kind of turn. But overall, let us know what you guys think below. Are you still invested in the Ultimate Universe? Have you liked some of these titles? Have they lost your attention? And if you've enjoyed the Ultimates or Ultimate X-Men, let us know. We're always interested in seeing folks' opinions. We'll never pretend we're the 100% experts on this stuff, so it's always great to see those perspectives. Let us know what you think, guys. As always, we appreciate you watching. God bless you, and we'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.